Welcome to AssistEdge RPA Understanding Cognitive Services webinar. Agenda of the webinar is to learn about cognitive services in AssistEdge RPA Automation Studio. The AssistEdge Automation Studio supports two service providers to run the cognitive services. These two service providers are Google and Microsoft. For consuming cognitive services in an automation process, a user must have a valid subscription or application interface key obtained from these service providers. AssistEdge RPA supports to all the cognitive services provided by Google and Microsoft. For more details of these services, please refer to the Microsoft and Google API website. In Automation Studio, these are the activities in the Cognitive Services tool. The Cognitive Services activity contains other sub-activities like language, vision, speech, and generic cognitive services. Since all these activities are used within the scope of cognitive intelligence applications, therefore, it is mandatory to create an application of type cognitive intelligence apps before being able to use these activities. Let us go in the Automation Studio and explore the cognitive services. I have opened Automation Studio. Let's look how these services can be consumed using Automation Studio now. Please make a note that for consuming cognitive services in an automation process, a user must have a valid subscription or application interface key obtained from these service providers. Under the Canvas tools of Automation Studio, the Cognitive Services activity contains other sub-activities like language, vision, speech, and generic cognitive services. Since all these services are used within the scope of cognitive intelligent applications, therefore it is mandatory to create an application of type cognitive intelligence apps before being able to use these activities. I will create a process and will drag and drop the application activity from process components and connect it with the start node. Click select an application followed by add new application. I will select application type as cognitive apps and provide application name. We need to select the login type. Login type can either be a key which requires application interface key or credentials which requires user ID and password of the subscription. I will choose key. Once the cognitive application is configured, all the cognitive activities can be used inside this application activity. Let us double click this. We can drag and drop the cognitive services related activities on this canvas and we can carry on with the automation. Under the cognitive services, for language activity, I will drag it and drop it here. 8 types of services are supported by Google. First one is the annotate text. The annotate text service provides all syntax, sentiment, entity, and classification features in one call. The classified text service classifies the document into categories. Entity analysis finds named entities such as proper names and common nouns in the text, along with entity types, salience, mentions of each entity, and other properties. Entity sentiment analysis finds entities similar to entity analysis in the text and analyzes sentiment associated with each entity. Language detection service detects the language of given text. Sentiment analysis service analyzes the sentiment of the provided text. Syntax analysis service analyzes the syntax of the text and provides sentence boundaries and tokenization along with part of speech tags, dependency trees, and other properties. Translate service translates input text and return translated text. This was about Google. For Microsoft, 5 types of services are supported. First one is entity analysis. It returns a list of recognized entities in a given document. Key phrases returns a list of strings denoting the key talking point in the given text. Language detection returns the detected language. In this webinar, we will be checking one of the demonstration of these services provided by Microsoft, and that would be language detection demo. Then we are having sentiment analysis. It returns a numeric score between 0 and 1. Scores close to 1 indicate positive sentiment, while score close to 0 indicate negative sentiment. Translate service translates the text and returns translated text. This was about language. Let us drag and drop Vision now and check out its services. For Vision activity, Google supports Analyze Image API, which can perform face detection, safe search detection, label detection, etc. based on selected visual features in the configuration window. Microsoft supports 3 Vision services. First one is Analyze Image. It extracts a rich set of visual features based on the image content. This service can analyze categories, faces, adult detection, etc. by selecting an appropriate visual features in the configuration window. The OCR service detects text in the image and extracts the recognized characters into a machine-usable character strip. Tag image generates a list of words or tags that are relevant to the content of the supplied image. Then we are having speech activity. Let us drag it and drop it and explore the same. For speech activity, Google provides speech to text and text to speech services. These services can convert spoken audio to text and vice versa. Then Microsoft Service Provider provides 2 services, speech to text and speaker verification. Speech to text converts spoken audio to text, and speaker verification service verifies an audio with a pre-enrolled profile. Then we are having generic cognitive service available under cognitive services. Let us drag it and drop it here. Let us explore it now. The generic cognitive service activity is used to consume cognitive REST API of different providers. A user must have complete knowledge of technical details of REST endpoint. The response header provides the JSON of all the headers in the response, and response provides the body of the response. Upon clicking on the settings icon, further API configurations such as HTTP method, stream file, URL, header, body, and download file can be done. Let us close this. With this, you have now understood the AssistEdge RPA cognitive activities. Let us check one implementation which is based on language activity. For that, I will close this process and I will create a new process. At right hand corner, I am clicking over Create Process. Before starting the automation, let us first understand what is the business need to automate this business process. Consider one example. Atlanta Private Limited is a call center. In this company, call center personnel needs to analyze text originating in several languages. It can be documents, social comments, contact center interaction, etc. And obviously, this analysis either by manual or automatic means requires the use of resources specific to each language. But first, it is necessary to detect the language of the text. So let us start the implementation. To complete the demonstration, since I will be utilizing language detection which is available under cognitive services, I will be providing an input in a specific language, and this automated process should be able to detect the language used in the text. This is the simple example of language converter. I have provided a text in Spanish language and the meaning of that text is, this is the cognitive services demo in Automation Studio. I wanted to identify the language which is used in this sentence. For that, I will be consuming the Microsoft Text Analytics API which supports language, and in this Text Analytics API, whichever languages are supported, those all can be leveraged as it is in the Automation Studio. So let us check the demo. For this implementation, I will be utilizing Vision Cognitive Services, and the task would be to detect the language. Let us add an application. I will click on Add Application button and I will choose the Cognitive Apps. We need to provide the application name, Cognitive Apps Language Detection. This should be the name of application. I will add it. Application has been added successfully. Let us provide the application properties now. At right hand corner, we need to provide the application description and application display name. Language detection. This is the application name. I will copy this application name and paste it in the description. Application name and application type will auto-populate since we wanted to do the cognitive services automation. That's why we had chosen application type earlier as they are cognitive apps. That is why application type is Studio Cognitive. Each startup launch required, it is by default true. Each startup launch required signifies if the cognitive application must be launched separately and not to attach to an already launched application. Under miscellaneous, is application track is applicable only for AssistEdge Engage. It signifies if the application is tracked for time spent by Engage during the process execution. Is multi-instance allowed? It has been decommissioned now. It was applicable only for AssistEdge SE, that is AssistEdge Engage now. Then we are having license type. The type of license used for the cognitive service. The available options are BYOL and EVOL. BYOL stands for Buy Your Own License. EVOL stands for EV Owned License. That is EdgeVerve Owned License. In our case, it is Buy Your Own License because I do have a separate key available with me to do this implementation by Microsoft provider. Resource group contains the cognitive service resources such as database, virtual machines, and so on. Each reset required signifies if the application reset needs to be done after each automation is executed. If it is not selected, the application does not reset. Each sequential reset signifies if the application reset needs to be done one after other in no particular order. If it is selected, it is mandatory to have a reset process for that particular application created and used inside the application. Each sequential sign-in signifies if signing in to the application is required by the automation process in a sequence in which the application is used in the process. If it is selected, it is mandatory to have a sign-in process for that particular application created and used inside the application. And the crucial point on which we should concentrate is login type. It signifies the way sign into the cognitive service must be done. Available options are key and credentials. A key is used if sign-in must be done using the key. Credentials should be used if sign-in must be done using the sign-in credentials. In my case, I do have a valid key available with me that I am going to showcase you. Then we are having sign-in option. It signifies if sign-in to the cognitive service is required. By default, it is set to true and cannot be edited. Let us save these application properties. Data has been added successfully. I'll go on the canvas and choose the application type as cognitive apps. and let us select the application, Cognitive Apps Language Detection. This is my application. Let us double click to this application and do the implementation. For doing the implementation, we will require certain parameters. For that, I am creating these parameters. First type of argument or parameter which I will be using is input text. The direction should be in and the argument type is string. We need to provide the default value in here. In double quotation, I am going to provide the sentence which I am having with me. I will say Ctrl V. Next type of argument is output type of argument, which will return the result back to us into the JSON format. So let us create an output type of argument. It is JSON output. The direction would be in, argument type would be string. Then finally, I will create another argument named as language. It would be of type in and argument type would be string. So these are the three types of arguments which I have created. Let us minimize this. In the canvas tools, I will type language as an activity and let us drag it and drop it over canvas. There are two providers available, Google and Microsoft. I am having a valid Microsoft key available with me. So the provider in my case is Microsoft. We need to choose the service. It is language detection. Let us do the configuration. For that, I am clicking over settings tab. Let us provide the API URL. I have kept API URL handy with me. I am going to hit to this URL, https Central India API. Under that, cognitive services, text, analytics, and this is the version 2 of languages which I am preferring. So this is the web URL of Microsoft to which I need to hit and I need to utilize this API in Automation Studio. So let us copy this as it is. To get this URL, you can refer to Microsoft web services which are available over internet. I will enter this URL. Now let us choose the input. So we have provided input in argument. The argument name is input text. I am choosing that. And after hitting this URL, we will consume language detection service. So after detecting the language, that should be saved in JSON output. I will say close this activity. Post that, whatever result I will be having with me in the JSON format that I wanted to get. For that, we are having a ready activity available. The name of activity is JSON activity. I will drag it and drop it over canvas. JSON activity allows you to modify, form request or retrieve data of the JSON response received from a REST API or other activities in Automation Studio. Additionally, you can pass the existing JSON string by manually passing the JSON string using the inbuilt JSON editor. It helps you to extract a relevant part of the response as per your requirement. If required, you can even update the JSON object and the JSON array by using this activity. If we choose JSON action, we are having setter. Setter action modifies or adds a new property into a JSON object as per the location provided. Then we are having getter. It retrieves data from the JSON data file. Then we are having push. It adds new object into the JSON array. If you choose JSON action as setter, you can pass the JSON input for processing the request in two different ways. If you choose setter, you can pass data as JSON file or you can pass the data manually. If you wish to use getter as the action, then you can pass the JSON input for processing the request in two different ways. You can pass the data as JSON file or you can pass the data manually. When it comes to push as JSON action, you can pass the JSON input for processing the request in two different ways. You can pass the data as JSON file or you can pass the data manually as well. In our case, since we wanted to extract the data which is coming from language detection service, that's why I would be choosing getter as JSON activity. And I will be showcasing in detail how we will be able to extract the data from language detection service provided by Microsoft. The JSON action which we wanted to perform is getter, and JSON input would be whatever is the output of our language detection service that we will be providing in order to get it into the JSON activity. So JSON output is my parameter name. I will click on settings option to map the output. Let us add the field. I wanted to extract the data. For that, I am typing one JSON path. So what data you wanted to extract from language detection service that we need to provide. Since we have chosen getter as an action, I need to provide what data I want to get from that web service. In my case, since I wanted to showcase what all data we will be able to extract from language detection web service, I am going to type I wanted to extract entire data from this implementation. So simply I am providing documents. Please make a note that when we extract the data from any web service, it consists the data into the JSON format. So I wanted to extract entire data. So that is why I have provided documents here. I will confirm this data and let me just test run this process. I will provide the subscription key and I will set up the environment. Environment setup is completed. Now we can go ahead and test run this implementation. Test run is successful. For writing this output on the console, I am utilizing write line activity. I will drag it and drop it on the canvas, and let us use our variable which we have utilized for saving the result of JSON activity, that is language. Now I will test run this process once again. Test run is successful. You can click on the output and check what is the output. We have detected the language. It is having ID, detected language details. This is the name of the language which we detected, named as Spanish. Also has provided some other details like ISO 6391 name, ES and score 1.0. So to showcase to end user, I do not want that rest of the details should be shown. For that, I will be only extracting this Spanish element which is available in the 0th index of this implementation. So for that, what I'll do is, I'll again click on the settings icon. I'll click on the output mapping. From the data which I have extracted, from that I wanted to extract the Spanish language which is available at 0th index and the detected language. It is at the 0th index dot name of the language. This I wanted to extract, and it should be mapped with a variable named as language. Let us confirm this. Let us type a code. Detected language and I'm appending variable name in here. Our variable, which is consisting the output, it is named as language. I chose it. Let us save this process. So process has been saved with the valid name. I will close this. Let us test run this process now. Test run is successful. And let us check in output what we are having as a detected language. So in our output, the detected language is Spanish. This completes our implementation of language detection. In this webinar, we have learned about AssistEdge RPA cognitive activities. Thank you.